Hodges. This is Meredith Hodges in Fairfield. We're on the east side of Fairfield on Glasgow Road in the home of Tom Bradley. And this is Tom's studio. And we're going to find out from you today what you do in the studio.
Right.
So my understanding is that you do woodworking of an old form that is called Intarsia.
Right.
And Intarsia is what? It's taking various pieces of wood of various colors, and it's making almost a bas-relief sculpture, isn't it?
Right. It's just like a painting, or like an artist would take and make a painting. You do different colors to make each separate piece, and each piece is cut and formed and.
So it's like a wood mosaic almost.
Right. It is.
But it's not flat.
No, there's no flat. It's not entirely 3D either, but it's definitely got some raised places.
So the top is sort of sculptured in this
Right.
various heights of the wood as well as different colors.
Right.
So do you paint the wood to get the different colors, or do you
No,
use...
I use no paint or stain. It's all natural wood.
So this is the real Intarsia, because
Right.
Intarsia comes, you were telling me, from, it's very old, isn't it?
Right. It's several centuries.
And they've even seen it as far back as ancient Egypt, but it was most famous in Italy.
Yeah, around the 16th century. It was
So now, when you do these, are they like paintings? They're square and like paintings, or different shapes?
well, if you mean, are they like pictures? Yes, they're pictures.
So you could hang them up somewhere and look at them?
Some of them are like silhouettes, or, and some of them are framed. Some of them are partial frames. It's according to the atmosphere that you want to create with the picture.
Do you use a pattern for this? Then you must, I would think.
Yes, I buy patterns, and I copy those patterns with a copying machine, and I take that and I take each piece and I cut each individual piece out with a pair of scissors. And I don't know whether you want this or not.
Yeah,
But,
we want to know everything that you do.
But I cut each individual piece out, and then it's marked with a grain direction. And so you find a piece of wood, and it's also, she gives you an idea of type of wood to use, and she'll take and say like white or oak or dark or semi-dark or something like that. So you find a piece of wood with a grain direction that goes in the direction that she indicates, and then you take and cut the piece out. I take the pattern, I cut out the piece off of the copy that I make, and I paste that onto that piece of wood with a piece of Scotch tape. I use a lot of Scotch tape.
Yeah, I'll bet you do.
I have lots of rolls of Scotch tape. But then I take and cut it out on the jigsaw, and I usually cut out the whole piece first, and then I take and make each piece fit as close as possible.
So in a way, it's almost like a puzzle at the beginning.
It ends up being a puzzle, yeah.
That you put together, and then
Right.
I would think you'd make it either higher or lower with a sander.
Right. There's pieces that are thick and thin, and some pieces that you raise, and you can raise them by adding plywood underneath them, or using different thicknesses of wood. And
Now, where in the world do you get patterns like this? Is there like a society of people who do Intarsia woodworking where you can send for patterns?
right, there's a lady that has revived Intarsia, and she sells these patterns. There's another person now or two that's getting into it by the patterns. But
How many people do you think, say, in Iowa do this kind of thing, really?
well, I'm sure there's lots of them, because up at Amana they had 3 or 4
So in
people
Amana
up
they're
there.
quite good. But I noticed that some of yours were extremely detailed. I bet there are not too many people that can actually do that.
Well, I like to make sure that I got as good a piece as I can get when I get done with it.
So I bet there are some people that can do the simpler ones, and there's just a handful that can do things that are very complicated.
Right, they don't have, Belle says I have a lot of patience for one thing, and that's woodworking.
Right.
But I
I
like
bet it takes patience.
it does.
When did you start doing Intarsia?
I think I started in Intarsia about in 1994, I think.
Huh.
But
But you'd had experience in woodworking before
oh yeah, I
that?
took woodworking in high school, and I done woodworking for years, but I got away from it for a long time, and then I knew that I was going to be retired here pretty quick, and so I got back into
Well, that was a good idea. Well, now tell me, did anyone show you how to do this, or did you have to just
No.
figure it out yourself?
No, I've made so many different pieces out of wood that no, nobody showed me how. But when I first started, you had to find your way as you went
I would
along.
think you would.
But it really wasn't that difficult. If you make a mistake, nobody knows it but you.
Now, is it when you get into it, when you make a mistake, can you just replace that piece?
Right, you can replace it or blend in the other pieces to make it fit right, as long as it looks like what you want. Why, it doesn't make that much
Now,
difference.
do you glue those pieces down before you sand them? Or
Oh no, each piece is handled probably 5 or 6 times when you cut it, and you fit it, and you re-sand a little on the edges to make it fit properly, and everything. You handle those pieces many, many times. And no, you completely finish sand and everything, the piece, before you glue it.
Well, that would make it easier.
All the pieces before you glue them back on.
So then if you made a mistake, you could
Right, make a new piece.
make a new piece. Well, this is fascinating. I was wondering if you would show us a little bit about how you do here in the shop before we
Certainly.
see the finished pieces.
Right. That's it.
Good. So Tom has agreed to show us something of the process of making these, and that's a pattern in your hand, isn't it?
Right. I purchase these patterns, and then I always take all the patterns that I make and I photocopy them so I don't ruin my original pattern.
Right, so you get to keep it and make it over
Right.
and over. Well, maybe we could do a close-up on this and people could see, we see here what you had described, don't we? That she's marked the direction that the wood grain should go in, and then M for medium color. Look at this. How in the world you ever get all these little teeny pieces of all these different colors together, I will never know.
Well, I do a lot of changing on some of those things. And just like this piece right here, see, she just suggests that you use a pen or something to just sculpture it in, without doing all the work. But if I'm going to do it, I like to do it the way.
Right, so you don't draw it in, you actually sculpture
Right.
it into the wood.
Each one of them I make into an individual piece.
That's amazing.
Makes it more
I bet
difficult.
there aren't too many people that do this.
No, but I like it that way.
Well, look here. I see that you have cut out a couple of these same dogs, and we can see them at the beginning. They're not three-dimensional yet, are they?
No, these are
They're just flat,
they're
like a puzzle.
They're just cut out of the different types of wood, and they're laid there, and there's no finish on any of them yet.
So we see a little
That's
nose,
the mouse.
mouth. Is that the mouth?
Mouth, but it doesn't
Fits
fit in
in.
there. It's got to be fit in there.
Fit in there better, and probably a
That's
straight
the nose. The nose will have to be fit, and then it is raised up a little bit so it sticks out.
And so you were telling me that you'll have to raise this paw a little, won't you?
Right.
So it looks like it's sticking out of the
paw,
basket.
Right. I put
it
a little
sits
piece
like
of
that.
wood under it and raise it up. The same way with the other paw.
And then this gets sort of sculptured on the top.
Right. The basket is made like fixed so it looks like it's weaved. And
And that you do with a sander?
I do that with a sander and a
How do you sand such tiny little pieces? That's the part I can't figure
most
out.
of it's very carefully.
Very carefully.
But I skin. I don't have many fingernails. I keep cutting all my fingernails off and grinding them off.
And then you use just a basic woodworker's glue, is that
Right. After everything is finished and fixed the way I want it, each individual piece is fit and ground and everything, I start gluing it on. But I just use a regular woodworker's glue onto a plywood back. Everything is on a plywood back or some type of back.
Some type of backing. And then you were telling me that you blew this up and you're going to make the basket bigger and put more puppies in it?
Yeah, that's one of my future projects that I'm going to to do.
The other thing that I thought was interesting, here's your jigsaw.
Right, that's the jigsaw.
You were showing me how many blades you used in cutting these dogs out.
Well, when you cut these out, they have to be perpendicular. And if you use a dull blade, why it kind of follows around a curve or something, and it isn't perpendicular. They won't go together properly.
Right,
You got big
right,
gaps.
Right.
So I change blades a lot. They're not that expensive, and takes a little time, but
I'll bet it does.
but a lot of the things, particularly like this dog here, see, I can make two at once. If I cut two at once, I glue two. It's made out of, so she suggested I use 1/2-inch wood, so I make them out of 1/2-inch wood. So I plane down my wood to 1/2-inch wood, and then I put two pieces together.
Oh,
Then I can
see.
cut two
Cut
at
them
once.
the same
But if the
time.
blade isn't perpendicular,
Then
that
you have
bottom one is
trouble.
really distorted. So you have to keep checking for perpendiculars. But you cut this out, and it hopefully fits pretty good.
Looks like it fits pretty good. Now, what kind of a finish do you use on them when you're done?
I take what I do with mine after they're sanded and glued and everything.
And not stained.
No stain. I take and put on just a wood. I buy it out at Walmart. It's just
Spray lacquer?
it's a sealer. Puts
A
on a
sealer
sealer, you
first.
know, and I spray that down. And I always take some 600 grit sandpaper, and then after it's all done, I sand that all down.
So it's completely fine.
Yeah, it's real smooth.
Almost like fine furniture.
Yeah, and then I take, after I do that, I take and put just a spray lacquer. That's all I use is spray lacquer.
So that
And I
keeps
put
it,
several coats of
keeps
spray
it
lacquer.
safe.
But
Well, now we need to see that some of the finished product.
yeah,
You have to
I've
show
got
us.
I've got a lot of them.
Good. So we'll go in and see.
Right.
Tom has been persuaded to show us some of the different woods he uses. Now, it looks to me like there are 7 or 8 different colors of wood here.
Right, it's all native wood that I get. We got cherry, soft maple. I've also got a hard maple that I don't have. I got walnut. I got hackberry.
It's almost white, isn't it?
It's the whitest wood that I can find. It's a lot whiter than the soft maple. And there's mahogany. Of course, I've got oak, and I got pine, and I also have native cedar.
It's a pretty
It doesn't
color.
look like it now because that's really what the color is.
It's very pretty.
But
Well, you can really see it's like a real rainbow of woods.
that's
Where do you get your wood mostly?
most of my wood I buy from the Amish over around Drakesville. They got a large sawmill over there that I can buy just about any kind that I want.
So none of these are too difficult to get.
None of that I use, no. I don't use anything that is
Rare
that hard to
logs or
get. Yeah,
anything.
right.
Well, the other thing I was hoping you would do is show us some of the machinery that you use
Right.
as you make these. We saw the jigsaw here.
Right. Well, I have all of, just about any kind of woodworking piece you want. I have planers to plane these down to different thicknesses. And of course I have the saw to saw them into shorter pieces. And then I have a jigsaw, which to me is probably used more
Than anything.
than anything else. And,
Is that hackberry there?
pardon?
Is that hackberry there that you just took off?
Right, this is a piece of hackberry. And it's a 1/2 inch thick. That's what I've been
That's what you
used to
use.
make a lot of this stuff. And I take this saw and I glue my pattern on, or don't glue it, I use Scotch tape. And then I saw that around there. And like I say, these little pieces, you have to be very careful. The saw blade has to be perpendicular.
And very clean and new.
And very carefully saw this out or it won't fit and match in with the other piece. So,
So it looks like you're making a lot of use of that piece of hackberry.
oh well, I've used it and used it. I save all of my scrap because I never know when I want a piece that big
Just
of
that big.
something, you know, and a certain thickness. And I try to keep them separated into thicknesses and kinds of wood so that it's not that difficult. Many times I have to dump it all out on the floor to find
the right piece
with a grain going the right direction that I want. But I save all that. I should burn part of it, but
Never.
you know how that goes.
Now what's this over here?
This is my bandsaw. Sometimes I'll take, if I don't have to have too much of wood, I'll take a piece of wood and just use it to split a piece.
Right.
But I hardly ever use the bandsaw.
Not so much.
No.
And then over here.
Of course, I use my drill press a little bit.
What do you use your drill press for?
Well, I use my drill press mostly to, like I get something that takes a hole or some things. I'm trying to think, like for eyes.
Eyes, yes, that's
they
what I
have
was
to be.
thinking
I
also.
just put an eye in there. But the thing I use probably the next most are my sanders. I got sanders everywhere with different grain fineness on them, you know. And disc sanders, belt sanders. But I use those to round off my edges, contour, and blend in to make the pieces all blend in. I also use a Dremel sander. I use a Dremel sander an awful lot.
Now, Dremel sander is often used by a jeweler, isn't it?
Right. This I don't even know where I got it now. I probably put it
hidden Dremel sander.
But anyway, I take that and like this piece here, I'll take my Dremel sander and I'll run down there. I usually mark a line on here so deep so I don't go too deep. And I'll just grind that and then I'll blend it in with my Dremel sander. I use the Dremel sander a lot. Usually it's a lot to round off edges if they're not very deep. And
so here we have a piece that's a piece of the pattern of the basket the dog is sitting in, isn't it?
Right.
And instead of drawing these lines on like some people do, you're actually going to round them out and make it look like a basket on this side with the Dremel sander.
Yeah, it looks like a real basket when you get
and
done.
then this fits right in here.
Right.
So these are mostly the tools that you use then.
Right. Right. I have other tools that I use, but these for Intarsia, I can get by with just these 3 or 4 little tools.
It looks really like it doesn't take much of an area for you to do this work in.
It doesn't. That's one of the reasons I do Intarsia instead of furniture.
Right. Furniture takes a lot of space.
Right, it sure does.
Well, now let's go and look again and see what we see of what you've made.
All right.
So now we're upstairs in your living room looking at one of your finished pieces in a frame, isn't it?
Right, this one is framed.
And this looks to be like a Florida scene.
Right, they call this the alligator bog.
Where is that alligator? There he is.
There he is, right there.
Look at all these pieces that you've done.
Yeah, this mosaic probably took almost as long as cutting out all the rest of it and turning them down, because each one of them is a little separate piece made with walnut and mahogany. These little pieces are mahogany and the dark ones are walnut.
And then this white is that hackberry you told us
White.
about.
This flower is a hackberry flower. This leaf is a native red cedar. Of course, it's all native wood, but this is walnut here. It doesn't look walnut. It's old walnut that's been wet and dried out again, but that is.
But it looks beautiful.
That's walnut. This is all walnut here. This is an old piece of walnut. This is plywood in the background to fill in the hole.
Spaces.
But this one here is a little squirrel or mouse. It's made out of cherry. And these are soft maple. This is soft maple. This is soft maple. This is cherry. But see, the grain goes all different directions on that stuff.
It's wonderful.
And
you wouldn't think that just wood would have that many shades of color, would you? When you get it all together like this, the color is very rich. It's very strong in color.
Right, and they're all native, so it's not hard to, you can get it.
How long did a piece like this take you to make?
I hate to say, probably. I usually try to make, I try to make 2 at once, because I have 2 kids.
Why?
I have 2 kids.
I love it too.
So I take.
And there's no fighting.
Right, and it probably took me, for the 2 of them, probably took me 6 weeks of my spare time.
It's a long time.
Right.
It's a long time.
Maybe longer. I don't I'm afraid I probably wouldn't do much if I knew how long it took.
So we have lots of pieces here to show you.
Right. But this piece here is walnut.
Is it?
So,
I think we're going to go look at some other pieces. You have so many to choose from, it'll be hard to pick.
right.
We have a wonderful buffalo here. When did you make the buffalo?
I made that in 95. I don't know what part of the year, but I made that in 95.
I notice a real difference on this piece. It's not just flat and then contoured. I noticed that you have gotten the detail of the hair and the fuzziness in the bison's mane. I wonder how in the world you ever did that.
I think I've done that very carefully because I had to use a Rube Goldberg tool to make that thing, and I tell you.
Well, what did you use?
Well, I got a deburring tool from the factory, and I went and took and had an old flexible cable that I had off an old vacuum cleaner, and I stuck it in my drill press and chucked in the deburring tool, and I used that all the way through on that to do that. And I tell you, I had a lot of skin knuckles and everything else, but
boy.
because that wood is hard.
And you did so much of the pattern in there. It looks just so wonderful and real. The texture in that is beautiful.
Right.
When the light shines on it, it looks like real mane.
It does look realistic, and I like the way it kind of stands out like a 3D, like the mountains in the back and the river down in the bottom.
He's standing in front of the frame even.
Right. That is true Intarsia when you take a frame and do that.
And also artistically, it's always very interesting when it comes outside the frame.
But it's made mostly out of cherry, the buffalo is, and walnut. And of course the horns are hackberry again.
Even within the cherry, there's a difference in color that's very beautiful to see.
Right, you can pick out a different shade of any kind of wood and make it fit.
I see maybe 3 or 4 kinds of cherry there. Very distinctly different. The Indian is very complicated, isn't he?
Right, it was quite hard to fit together. Believe it or not, the outside edge of the design was really hard to fit.
Oh, the frame itself?
Right. No, not the frame.
The ripply part.
The ripply part. That was probably maybe the most difficult.
Just to get the pieces to fit together?
Right. But there's a lot of pieces in that. I don't know how many there really is, but
there's a lot.
But there's
You were telling me that sometimes people just draw the distinctions between the feathers, but you actually made each one separately.
Right. I have seen people make these, and I don't know why they don't take the time, but they probably got a reason. But they just, instead of individual feathers, they just cut out a glob, and then they just draw lines in between it. And, well,
that almost seems like cheating.
To me it is, because I love to make it.
Well, how you've done it there is so beautifully. As the feathers go down, even though it's the same woods, you see such a distinct shading.
Right.
And to have chosen those woods as it goes down in that way, it's very, very beautiful.
Thank you.
Here we have a forest scene that's pretty complicated. How large is this piece?
32 by 38 inches.
That's no joke. I've never seen anything with so many tiny pieces. Looks to me like this is where we use the drill press.
No, those are small dowels.
Oh, they're dowels.
They're cut off, and different kinds of dowels, all different, walnut dowels, oak dowels, any kind of dowels that that they make, and they're just cut off, and there's no stain on them.
That's just amazing.
Those little leaf-like things are cedar. Then there's walnut, cherry, hackberry.
See a little tree frog up there?
Yes, he's hiding up there on a limb.
He's hiding up there, looking like a leaf.
Right.
And I see a little salamander that also looks like a leaf.
Yeah, he's coming down the side of that birch tree.
This is just remarkable. And this was the same lady did this pattern that does the most of the other patterns.
Right. I get all my patterns from the same place.
Now this seems to me to be one of the most complicated patterns I've ever seen. You were telling me, I think, that she sold how many of these?
When I talked to her, she had sold over 1,700 of these patterns, and she said that she doubted that there was 250 of them that was
Actually completed.
actually completed.
I can really
It's
see
really
why.
difficult.
How many hours does something like this
I'd
take?
hate to say. Probably at least 4 months.
Good
And a lot of
heavens.
time, because at the time I was kind of recuperating from a rupture and didn't have nothing else to do except.
So it was a good time to do the most complicated
Right.
one of all. Well, it certainly is beautiful. We've persuaded Tom to show us some wooden things that are not quite Intarsia, but I can see that you would have to be pretty familiar with wood to do them. Look at this wonderful collection of old cars. And they're exact replicas of some of them, aren't they? You were telling me.
Right, most of them are from the late 1920s and early 1930s.
So the back of that goes up and down?
Right. There's many of these cars, you bring an older person in and he'll look at the car and he'll say immediately what car that was.
What car that was.
Right.
Look at some of those others up on the
Right.
shelves, how intricate they are. Again, you're using all shades of wood to make the colors, aren't
That
you?
particular one is all oak. This particular one is a Duesenberg, and it's got 74 small parts in it.
Good heavens.
And I think it's a 1936 copy of a 1936 Duesenberg.
And once again, you use patterns for these?
Right, I bought patterns. This particular company is no more in business. You can't buy these patterns anymore.
So that makes them even more wonderful.
But there's a lot of these. I have a lot more that I've never finished
You
yet.
never did them.
Right.
You have to show us the one with the intricate wheels that you did.
Right, I do a lot of, all my wheels that I make them myself. And these wheels are not the type that, when the people buy them, they take and cut the inside of them away and they just put the spokes in. But my spokes are all made with a jig. I make this centerpiece and drill holes all the way through the centerpiece. Then I put the small pieces in, and then I pull them out to fit the outside of the rim so that it's just like a press fit.
That's just amazing.
It's just like a real car. I mean, if you look at it from the inside or the outside, they both look the same.
Right, they look genuine.
But-
Just amazing. How many of these little cars do you think you've made altogether? Looks like
I
an
don't
awful
know.
lot to me.
I don't know. This one here is a boat-tailed Packer, 1930. Of course, if I had one of them real, I'd have a lot of money, but but I don't know how many pieces are in it, the tail lights and everything. It's pretty intricate.
It's just amazing.
And then some of them I take and put music boxes in. This is a 1929 Ford truck. But,
How do you keep your grandchildren out of this room?
well, grandchildren probably have some.
They have some.
So I give a lot of my stuff to my kids, my grandkids. And so. Of course, she went and bought the new drapes. We had a train goes clear across the whole
good heavens. I wish I'd seen that.
And I had 3 or 4 of these things up there, and it was all in a line, and the train was all the way up through there. It was pretty, but she had to get rid of some of the stuff.
Well, here's a table with a little of everything on it.
Right, this is a collection of everything I couldn't find a place for.
I noticed some of the cars made their way down, the bigger ones.
Right.
And then we have some wonderful doll furniture.
Those are little Barbie tables. I have some made out of oak and some made out of walnut. And they're solid.
I'd like
The
to
little
see.
Barbies, when you set them around there, look
I
real.
was going to say, I'd really like to see Barbie
Yeah, I should
sitting
have brought
there.
some down. My wife, I think, got 50 or 60 of them.
And then here, this looks like a little desk.
That is an exact quarter scale replica of a real desk. The drawers, everything works. The tambour lid works.
Oh my word. Oh, look, it rolls down.
It's the exact replica.
This is absolutely wonderful. How did you ever make that roll top?
Well, had a jig and make this. This is the most important part, getting this. Getting those things here so that they're equal and get it to roll properly. And this thing here,
That's That's how I can't figure out
These
what
are all
you did.
individual pieces, and they're mounted on a piece of canvas. All timber tops are on a
I
canvas.
understand. So it rolls down in the
Right,
in the
it
slot.
rolls down and it goes clear down around behind, and everything goes down below.
That's just amazing. And then I see this little train. Is that the train that was above the drapes?
Right, this is the one that I had above my drapes. Only there was more cars. I only put this many out here. But it's got little doors. The doors work. Everything works.
That train must have taken a long time.
These little dowels on the back of the caboose, you can't buy walnut dowels that way.
Huh.
So I took those walnut dowels, little pieces of walnut, a little over 1/8 of an inch in square, and I chucked them in my drill press. And with sandpaper, I sanded them down and mic'd them till I got them all down to 1/8 of an inch.
Oh my word.
And put them in there.
Expect to see a politician giving a little speech off the bat.
Right. But they look realistic.
They really do. And then this wonderful thing, some of these things are useful, it looks like.
Right, this is a little hanger that I made, a little coat hanger, and I made these with ducks, and I made them with 3 or 4 different things, and attach these things on them, and on the back side of them is a center hole, which goes into a 2x4 so that you can hide the bolt where you mount them. So
Oh,
there's
you drill them in.
there's no way to, but
And then what's right next to it here?
these here are different types of letter holders or napkin holders that I've made. And I've made them with dolphins, I made them with a coon, I made them with all different
Oh,
kinds.
they're wonderful.
But I can use up my scrap lumber that way. They're little, real tiny pieces, but each one of those are individual pieces.
They sure make a wonderful gift, I'll bet.
Right, I give a lot of them away too.
Then I see many, many, many carousel horses.
Right, those carousel horses, I had a lady, she wanted some of them, and I told her she'd paint them, I'd give her one, she'd give me back one, and that's some of them that she gave me back. Those little rocking horses.
These little guys?
Yeah, a friend of mine painted those, and
Those are wonderful. And in front of it, I see the chopping board that a person could die for there.
right there, I made
Absolutely
several
beautiful.
different kinds of cutting boards. That particular one, you set over the sink, and the little bowl fits right down in the hole, and you just push your,
Scrape your choppings into there.
right.
This is wonderful. It's amazing to think you made all of this.
Right, that's just the small parts, like over in the box. There's 6 or 8 more of those little tables and chairs. And
And then we have something on the floor here that I like possibly the best of anything.
well,
First we have this marvelous dinosaur who squiggles and moves all over.
the kids get a real bang out of that.
I guess I must be a kid because it's my favorite thing. And then we have this cricket. And he hops along. You're telling me he was hard to make.
Well, it wasn't so hard to make, except that he was getting the legs to take and roll together
Roll
properly
evenly.
without skidding across.
Well, we have to see more of your Intarsia.
Well, there's lots of it here.
So we have dolphins here leaping about. They're more freestanding, aren't they? They're not framed in any way.
Right, there's like silhouettes.
Silhouettes, you call them. And here's the welcome sign. This is particularly wonderful because it's got all the 4 seasons, doesn't it?
Right, it starts out with summer, fall, summer, spring.
Look, there's the winter snowman.
Right.
I like him.
And the daisies for the spring.
It's wonderful. That's quite a welcome.
Yes.
Here's another one of these wonderful ones that come out of the frame. Look at this balloon.
Right.
And you were just pointing out to me what turns out to be my favorite part, which is down here in the little landscape is a little house. It's very wonderful. Here we see that Indian we saw upstairs again, but it has a companion piece of a lady Indian.
Right.
It's very beautiful.
It was real difficult to make those earrings because those are real thin pieces of wood that fit to the contour of the picture and glued on there.
That's amazing. Look at the bears. You've certainly done a lot of wonderful bears here in all sizes.
Right. The pattern originally came with the small bears, and one day I needed something to do, so I enlarged the patterns, and I made the larger bears.
Now we have big bears that look just like those other bears.
Right.
Those are big bears. Those are what, like 17, 18?
17, 18 inches tall.
Mercy.
Everybody likes the one with the sunglasses.
Well, you can't
Or the
not
brown
like
one.
the one with the sunglasses.
Of course, I like them all.
I do too. We have a stag here, and next
Yeah,
to
it's
it
a
we
little
have a
coon
wonderful
plaque
raccoon.
Right, it's just a little plaque that I made.
Uh-huh. You can really see how varied what you can make is.
A little welcome sign.
A little welcome sign with the door that everybody wants to open. There's really a lot of, it's very versatile what you're doing. There's almost no end to the type of thing that you could do.
Right.
This wonderful butterfly here.
Okay, that butterfly came out to be just, when they sent it to me, it was supposed to be just like a little, I looked like a hot plate holder really, but I put the frame around it, really made something nice.
This little one here.
Yes.
So that's the one that came with the hot plate frame.
Well,
But this
with no
is
frame.
With no frame, but you made the little one that looked
Right.
like this.
It looks a lot more, it looks more real with the frame on it.
Oh, it really does. It makes the
Right.
butterfly and the flowers stand out much
Right.
more beautifully. Then we have ducks. Ducks are a natural for this.
Yeah, that thing there is, I've never seen anybody that didn't like that.
And also this raccoon, I bet, is very popular.
That's
With
40
all the different color leaves.
That's about 40 inches from tip to tip on the coon.
He's wonderful. Then we have angels.
Right, again, I duplicated the pattern and reduced it.
So we have
and
big
made
angels and
made the
little
big one and
angels.
then the small one.
Those are beautiful. So I see hackberry. What's the golden colored wood that her robe is made
In the
of?
angel, soft
Uh-huh.
maple.
Is it maple? Oh,
Soft.
it's so beautiful. It's just the most beautiful golden color. Then we have little eagles and big eagles.
Yeah, the little eagle has the same amount of pieces as the large eagle.
Even though it's that tiny, that must have been hard to do. Also, it's not on a frame, so
Right.
it's sort of harder to imagine how you fit it all in there. We have deer. And then we have another bison. You might be able to see even more clearly how he has made the texture and the mane in this one, because the light is so good. And he's different than the other one because the colors are different of the wood. This is really amazing. We see 9 animals here, and you were telling me these are endangered. These are 9
Right, these are all
endangered.
animals that are endangered.
They're not endangered down here. Up here we see, what is this, a Florida panther?
Right, that's a Florida panther.
Uh-huh. And then we have a wonderful wrinkly rhinoceros.
That's the black rhino.
Uh-huh, black rhino.
I have no idea what kind of a tiger that is, or a lion that is, but it is a lion.
What's this little guy?
And there's a camel.
Uh-huh, some form of camel. And this wonderful, wonderful, sad-looking tiger.
I think that's a Bengal tiger. That's my favorite. He looks like you could just almost reach out and hug him.
He's so wonderful.
Right.
And a beautiful elephant. This wonderful, wonderful
And of
polar
course the
bear.
polar bear.
Makes me chilly to look at him.
And of course that's a manatee.
Oh, he's a beauty. And look at this zebra, which I can't even imagine what it took to
No,
make his stripes.
Took a lot of work because there's a lot of stress in some of that wood, and if the wood starts moving around on you, it makes it that much more difficult
Uh-huh.
to
Oh, I'll
put
bet it
together.
did. Plus those stripes aren't exactly straight either. So there's 9 of these separately and you hang them together? Is that
Right, that's
is that
my
right?
quilt.
That's your quilt? It's a
Right.
wonderful quilt. This
They're
is
19
just
inches
gorgeous.
square, so that makes my quilt 57 inches square.
Oh my word. This is really beautiful.
Thank you.
I like this grouping here. It's almost, some of them are almost like cartoons. I like the guy up in the tree and the pig underneath and those wonderful hobos below. It shows you can make cartoons out of anything, I think.
Right, that big old bass there.
That wonderful bass. And then I noticed an extremely large eagle.
Yeah, that is the same as a smaller eagle, only it's enlarged to 50
really
inches.
big.
That's 50 inches across.
Mercy, and what's underneath? I see cats. Cartoon cats.
They call that the whimsical cats.
It certainly is whimsical.
I copied that particular piece from a small picture out of Wood magazine that was probably 1.5 by 4 inches, and I blew it all up to 42 inches and made that pattern.
Oh, that's wonderful. Makes me cheerful just to see it. And then underneath it we have every little girl's dream in the world. How long did it take you to make this absolutely wonderful?
It took quite a while, but that
Dowels?
is a kit.
It's a kit?
Right, that's a kit.
Uh-huh. And you were telling me the windows open up and down.
Right, the windows slide up and down, the bottom ones, and it's also got a porch railing that's on the inside, but it's easily broken off, so I put it inside.
Yes, well that was wise.
It's got downspouts and it's got everything on it. It's
I can hardly stand it. And then next to where you're standing, we see something we started out with.
that's
And
my
we
little
see
dog.
the finished dog in a basket.
This particular dog I give my mother, and she's got it in a room out at the hospital. And this dog I'm holding is her dog, and she really likes dogs, and she really thought that was something. He looks pretty real.
Ginger makes a good model, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
Well, thank you so much, Tom Bradley. Do you ever sell any of these, or do you just give them away?
I give a lot away, and if people come down and they want to
beg
buy
you.
them, yeah, I'll sell them, because I don't get into, because I'd rather make something new.
Of course.
I don't like to make a lot over and over and over. That, to me,
Right.
takes the fun out of it.
It does.
But I
That's
love
'cause
to
you're an
make it. I
artist.
spend all my time that I can making that. My wife says that's about all I spend my time on.
Well, if somebody's lucky enough, they can come and get one of Tom Bradley's amazing original Intarsia woodworking. You'll never have seen anything like it.